Hey guys, we're actually here with Dr. Mike Villa, and I am Rudy Montes from Salute Stems CEO, and I have my other partner, Vice President David Allen Johnson.
Hi, and welcome. We'd like to share with y'all at this time some information about PTSD and talked about it with Dr. Mike and how CBD is a supplement that helps you get through your day and keep you away from the pharmaceutical drugs. I know it's helped me and many others, and that's what we'd like to talk about.
Dr. Mike, let me know basically who you are and what's your background.
Sure. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I am not a medical doctor. I am a plant researcher and have been for about 25 years. I've been an environmental consultant specializing in plant ecology and have done projects around the country. My interest in hemp in particular my journey began in about 2012. Mm-hmm. I had a very severe injury in 2010 that basically caused me to be treated with pharmaceutical medications.
Sure.
And those pharmaceuticals were very tough on my system. And so I was looking for alternatives.
Didn't mean to interrupt you,
No,
Dr.
no,
Mike.
not at all.
What kind of problems do you have with the pharmaceuticals?
Well, I had chronic pain. I've had 4 knee surgeries. I've had a shoulder surgery. I had a hernia surgery. There was a lot of medical issues that basically my physicians were prescribing non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, Motrin, acetaminophen, opiates for the pain. And those compounds were causing some really severe adverse reactions to my gastrointestinal tract. And I was looking simply for some alternatives. I've never been, up to that time, I had never been associated with cannabinoids in any way. In fact, I was an anti. It was a very difficult transition for me because I did believe in the pharmaceutical industry. I did have those preconceived notions. Sure. And when I was exposed to the cannabinoids and just found how gentle they were on my system, it made me think a lot more about their use for my particular issues. When I found success personally, I started looking at the bigger picture. And PTSD, in fact, was one of the first things that I actually looked at relative to the use of cannabinoids for different illnesses. And what I found was, contrary to a lot of belief, there is actually a lot of research referee journal data out there, mostly mouse rat studies. There isn't a lot of human studies, but I started a research and development company in 2014 to basically start looking at those questions.
Okay.
And the more questions that we started asking, the more structure that we started putting into the questions that we were asking, PTSD obviously came to the forefront of a lot of that research. And there is a lot of research out there indicating that CBD may help with the symptom presentation with PTSD.
And that's what I was wondering, because with me, I know it works.
Sure.
And I was wondering that maybe you could speak to how it works for me. How does my body process it? What does it do in my mind to lessen the stress at certain times of the day at certain levels?
Sure. To answer that question, we as human beings, and there's a lot of organisms, but we as human beings have what's called an endocannabinoid system. We produce compounds that are very similar to the phytocannabinoids. We call those endocannabinoids. Okay. The endocannabinoids that we produce are, we produce about 12. But two of the most commonly produced ones are an analog to THC called anandamide and an analog to CBD, which is called cannabidiol. The analog that we produce is called 2-AG. And the way that those compounds interact with our systems are they basically help with what's called homeostasis. Homeostasis is a balance. The balancing of our internal systems, whether that be endocrine, whether it be circulatory, whether it be pulmonary effects. There's a lot of different things that keep us balanced, and these cannabinoids that we produce are what do that.
Okay.
Now the phytocannabinoids, the THC and the CBD in particular, are a lot more durable molecules than the ones that we produce ourselves. So the ones we produce ourselves, they interact with the receptors, primarily the CB1 and CB2 receptors, but they degrade very quickly. They fall apart. And when they fall apart, they're obviously not interacting with those neuroreceptors. The phytocannabinoids, on the other hand, are much more durable. And so when they engage those receptors, they allow the effect of that receptor, they allow the duration to be a lot longer. So for things like PTSD, PTSD, when it manifests, it really is a, I don't want to say a disease, it's not really an illness. The interaction or the manifestation of that PTSD is actually a result of our inability to forget the mundane. And what the cannabinoids do is allow us to forget the mundane. So you as soldiers are, you're stimulated through your interaction with your environment, whether that be a manhole cover, a beat out car, it could be any of a number of things that are really in our, like me not being a soldier, I don't even think twice about it. But it's something that you have to think about for your safety. And so you're ultra sensitive to those kinds of things. What CBD allows you to do is to not necessarily forget about it, but to not be affected by those triggers.
Okay.
And so they allow you to kind of, the literature is pretty clear on this. It allows the organism, mostly mouse rat studies, so don't get me wrong, this hasn't been refereed or reviewed with respect to a lot of human studies, but what we found in those basic fundamental studies is that it allows the organism to release that so that the effect is not as long or is not prolonged by the stimulus. And so CBD has shown incredible promise for allowing those processes to occur.
Now, have you worked with any other veterans before with
Many.
PTSD and everything like that? Can
Many.
you talk a little bit about their symptoms and how the CBD works for them?
It's, that ultra sensitivity to those mundane situations is just decreased. It's just a leveling of the mood or of the interaction with that stimuli. And we have a number, probably a fairly large number, and it's certainly approaching the hundreds, where people have introduced CBD as a therapy and they just feel better.
It brings
It's
me
just
balance.
levels.
The balance that you were speaking
Correct.
of, and I feel that, and it really does. I guess you could say, I know my wife would use the word calming,
Yeah.
but it brings me and it shows me a balance, and that's the benefit that I have through using this supplement, CBD, the oil or the capsules, particularly.
Now, being that you're a veteran, David, you're looking at, having PTSD and using the CBD, stuff like that. If you didn't use it, where would you be?
As most veterans know, and dependents and family members, that you have those outbursts of stress, when it brings upon, and how you're, and those different feelings and anger and snapping. And I do not have that anymore. And I use CBDs. And I'm a 100% service-connected disabled veteran, and with a decade in the active duty. And what I found when I got out was I had to go to the VA.
Yeah.
And I've used a lot of different medicines, a lot. And the things that they've done to my liver and my organs, they take years off of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But with this is a natural medicine that's been used for thousands of years through different groups around the planet. And I have found that it brings me that balance. And it's helped with other symptoms of other problems, but the PTSD was one of the first things that I personally found the research online, and I went looking for in a state where you can't find it.
Yeah.
And so, and I know that's led us into this adventure where we are now,
Yeah.
is going out and finding that natural medication, because what you take that's man-made pharmaceuticals, they hurt your insides, and then take years over. The average veteran, 22 years of age, over his lifespan taking pharmaceutical drugs, it hurts his organs.
Sure.
And where this does not.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because we as a species, as a human species, as an ecologist, and please remember, I am not an MD. I am a plant ecologist. So I review things on a much broader level. I look at the development of the species. And we have, as a species, have been interacting with these compounds for as long as we've been eating food. And so when you look at the degradation pathways, when you look at how the plant, those compounds are metabolized in our body, it's very similar to food. It's the way we digest food. So it's very gentle in terms of its utility in the body. It's not hard like some of the pharmaceuticals. You know, some of the pharmaceuticals may turn on or off a certain symptom, but they do that very discreetly, and there's no counterbalance. The cannabinoids are very gentle. They counterbalance one another. To give you an example, THC is an agonistic molecule for the CB1 receptor. It engages that CB1 receptor, and that's what initiates the psychoactive response. Now, CBD at low concentrations will agonize that same receptor, but at high concentrations, it will actually mask that psychoactive effect. So you still can achieve a medicinal benefit without expressing a psychoactive response. There are different ways that those cannabinoids work, and they do counterbalance one another. And there's multitudes. CBD is only one of a myriad of actual cannabinoids that the plant produces. Somewhere over 100. There's additional compounds in the cannabis plant. Some of them are terpenes. They're called terpenoids. Beta-caryophyllene is one that's commonly known. Myrcene is another one that is commonly known. These are terpenoids that have additional medicinal benefits. And the way that we process our cannabis is to essentially take a whole flower extract and produce that in a very precisely dosed manner.
Sure.
For a certain response or a certain effect. With the PTSD is only one of those things, but there are lots of additional benefits that can be had from the plant, the compounds of that.
What are we looking at as far as the when we get to the point where these guys are taking the CBD, the veterans are taking it, or any of the community out there? How long is that process, and what are we going to be able to show? And as far as like some kind of a change and alter in their,
it's different for everybody because everybody's biochemistry is different. But in general, for PTSD, and believe me when I say this, the company that is represented by me, the company that is represented by these fellows, we produce products from CBD. I want everybody to know that CBD works, whether it's ours or anybody else's. That compound is something that can be used by our bodies. The fact that we are producing it in a very organic, a very spiritual process. You may have access through us, but there is access in other locations as well. And for any soldier, anybody that is looking to use this, there are multitudes of products, and they do all work. There are some products that are better than others.
Okay.
And what I want to describe to you is the fact that this is a compound that is extremely effective. I know the claim thing is very difficult. You might have to edit that out, by the way. But it is a compound that our body produces ourselves. And the way that it manifests when we are producing the appropriate levels is through that balance. When a soldier is not balanced and supplements with it,
Okay.
it will be helpful.
Can we recover from that, Dr. Mike? And, looking at CBD, where we're all at right now in the PTSD across the nation with so many cases, how, it's going to take a while to recover.
That's a difficult question to answer. From the literature, it appears that CBD does allow for both neural regeneration. It helps for those neural pathways that are connected to the PTSD. Because of the exposure over and over, our bodies produce these pathways, neurological pathways that are ingrained. And CBD, it appears, allows for the disruption of those pathways so that you are not hardwired into the effect. Though that hardwiring that has been done through your service appears to be able to have some flexibility in it. And that's really what the benefit of the cannabinoids are, is to allow that flexibility to occur so that you're not affected by that hardwiring.
Okay.
Well, I know your medicine and working Salute Stems and getting this off the ground has been a pleasure, because it's something that we're helping our brothers and sisters and veterans and just across the nation, not just military service. Post-traumatic stress disorder can come from a multitude of things, and just reaching out and just how this medicine worked for me, and developing a company and finding people so we can bring this to the masses. It's just been outstanding, and I want to thank you for all you do, and I'd like to thank my partner here for getting this going.
And I want to thank you for your service.
Thanks, sir.
And thank you for your service, and thank all of you for your service, because we do appreciate it. We work with a lot of veterans. We want to support the veteran community and all humanity. That's our biggest desire. And I really do appreciate you allowing us to fulfill our mission, which is to affect positive change and to help people.
Being that we're veterans here, and Dr. Mike is, talking about PTSD, there's other things we can talk about again, so stay tuned. Stay with us through Salute Stems. You'll see more videos and more feedback from this. So thank you.